So we have a session on nomadic mindset, ability to sustain sustainability by Mr. Kevin Cottam. Mr. Kevin is a global nomad leadership coach, Go Nomadic Private Limited. For over 40 years, Kevin has choreographed, inspired, coached, and guided world and Olympic figure skating champions and directed the 1988 Olympic closing ceremonies. His nomadic nature has taken him to study and research nomadic cultures in Mongolia, Kenya, and Morocco to look for the ancient wisdom we can adapt, evolve, and apply to our sustainable modern leadership and lives. His authentic, quiet, supportive, graceful authority, powerful and inspiring presence, and the refreshing, unique ability to dare and draw out the best performances in people, plus coming out from outside the industry, is why clients seek him out to work with them. The topic of the nomadic mindset has been delivered to MNCs, coaching communities, and HR professionals to assist them in understanding the mindset needed, most of all for today, to tackle sustainable development. Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin, for joining us today. Over to you for your session.
First of all, thank you so much, Aparna, for that wonderful introduction, and also Santosh also for inviting me here today. It's a subject that is extremely interesting and vital for not only myself, but also for the community at large in humanity. So I'm going to share with you, first of all, I want to say that at the very end, if you want to connect with me, I will have a LinkedIn QR code. So I would share with you a document also after this. So if you get in touch with me, that I will send it to you, which would be cool. What I have to say today might provoke you a little bit, but that's also something that is also important to me, is to here I want to inspire you and motivate them and give you a pause to think about, a moment to pause about the SDG4 and to give you a fresh perspective. In fact, my secret weapon is, in actual fact, I dare you to evolve. And so we need to evolve in a very different way when we think about education and also the sustainability aspects of life. 2015, of course, that the UN created all of these sustainability goals. But now we are 6 years later, we are in the midst of COVID. We're in COVID and we're having mental health issues. The climate is declining considerably. Education, it might be on hold, depending on the different countries. So many different factors are happening, and it's really changing our world. And the problem is that we need to evolve. We need to evolve past all of these things, and we need to evolve into a new way of looking at things. As Einstein said, we cannot solve our problems with the same thinking that we use to create them. And that's what I would like to share with you also, is about mindset. So we need to start thinking about this in a very different way. So let us go into sustainability. We know this, and in my book, The Nomadic Mindset Never Settle for Too Long, I'd say that sustainability is the interconnection of the four pillars: people, planet, profit, and culture. But there's a key word here, and I will, as you see my PowerPoint, you will see some key words which are actually in red. And I wish to share with you that those are the important factors, I believe, to think about here. Interconnection. Everything is interconnected, and we must realize this. And most of us have forgotten this. But ancient wisdom actually tells us that interconnection is just a natural way of looking at things. And so we have gotten away from that, which is sad in many ways. So the SDG4 is talking about to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities. Absolutely. This is extremely important. However, there is many things that we have to think about. And that is one, the sustainability, the ability to sustain sustainability. One of the challenges for all of us is that we need the momentum for sustainability. People get tired. They don't see the fullness of it. They don't continue the purpose, all of these things. And we need the right mindset to be able to help us through that. And I would like to share that we need a lot of grit and tenacity, the right mindset, the ability to sustain through action, absolute actions. I want to share with you and take you on a journey. I want to take you on a journey to share with you some navigational assets to help uncover what is the nomadic mindset. And so that you can build your ability to sustain sustainability. Now, when I say that, the nomadic mindset, this is what we will share today as to what is that? What are the qualities? And how can we start looking at sustainability through the lens of the nomadic mindset? Well, I would like to share with you what I think is a mantra for education. And that mantra is, there is no beginning to who you are. There is no ending to who you are. You are migrating to expansion. This, I think, is a very beautiful way of putting it, is migrating to expansion. Not only are we migrating to expansion to sustain sustainability, but our education is all about migrating to expansion. It is not about the old ways. We have come through a period of where we have all lived and we are hardwired into what I would call industrialized mindsets and thinking, as well as agriculturalist mindsets and thinking. However, they've got us into this challenging place that we see ourselves having to sustain sustainability in the planet so that we can survive, so everyone can survive. For that, as Einstein says, we need to shift our thinking. Let me share with you then just something about my trip. My trip, I started to write a book, and I wrote a book called The Nomadic Mindset, Never Settle for Too Long. And part of that was that I needed to spend time with nomadic cultures. I went to Mongolia and I spent time with the nomads in Mongolia. Then I went to Kenya, and then I also went to Morocco. And of recent, before COVID started, I went to Namibia and spent time with the Himba and also the San, the Bushman, and the Kalahari. I believe that the wisdom of the ancients lives within the nomadic cultures. I believe that the nomadic cultures are the forgotten peoples. I believe that they hold the wisdom and that can help us in sustainability. And they can also help us to give a view on how we can be educated by a different mindset, which is not where we are today. It is a little bit in many ways. In fact, most of my research has been not only with the nomadic cultures, but it's also been with executives. And executives have all shared with me that, I'd say about 90%, maybe not all, but 90% have said to me that what we need further in this world today, if we're going to sustain, we're going to continue, is a nomadic mindset. So there we go, we continue on with this. I arrived in Kenya. And in Kenya, this is where I was staying at the Marasimba Lodge, and this is what I could see from my balcony. Beautiful, beautiful expansion of this land. The Talak River below me was rather drought, and this, of course, is in the Masai Mara. And the Mara is where the land of the Maasai people are. And many of you probably already know of the Maasai people, the very majestic long walkers, the men that wear the red shukas and sometimes the blue shukas. But the understanding is that those shukas, the red color, is to keep the lions away, because they say the lions are afraid of red. But I wanted to spend time with a fellow by the name of Benson. And Benson was a Maasai warrior. Most of them have to go through that coming of age and development. And so he was shared with me a little bit about the story of coming of age. But one of the things that I asked him was, what is this about, why do you animals move? Why do they migrate? And he said they migrate for two reasons: seasonally, so that they can move from one land to another, so that the land can then refresh and grow again, so that when they come back, it'll be fresh for them to feed off of. And then he also said to give birth. And this giving birth is also what I would say what is in the mindset. And this mindset is about expansion. It's about giving birth to ideas, to creativity, thoughts, all of these things. But this is giving birth. So it's a metaphor in many, many ways. But one thing that Benson did say to me was the following. He said, we are migrating as a culture. Where we were is not where we are. We are evolving. And I asked you at the very beginning, I dared you to evolve. The thing is here, the word migrating comes up again. Migrating to expansion, migrating. And this is what we need to do in sustainability is to constantly migrate our thoughts and the educational aspects to migrate to what it is of the students of today. We need to migrate our thinking from where we were about old educational ways forward. And we can't just do a copy and paste into the education of individuals and countries, of third world countries, of what is just Western information and perhaps colonial thinking. Today, we are in a very different world. COVID has shown us it's a very different world. And this world is of the new generations, Gen Zs, the millennials, the Xenials, which are between. And this is extremely important for us to understand where they're coming from. What is it that they need traverse to navigate the world as they move forward? They don't want to be learning the same old way that was done before. Today, of course, there's all the online activities, but that's still a lot of the old stuff put onto a new platform. We need to find different ways that are going to function for these individuals in third world countries. So we take into consideration not only them, but the cultures, and each one is a different culture. They must still, I believe, contain and be with their cultures and their languages. This is what gives them the soul. This is what gives them the strength. And this is part of their nomadism. This is part of their nomadic culture. This is part of their nomadic thinking, is this evolution, this movement. And remember that everything is movement. So let us go on to the next slide. Oh, steer me. Sorry about that. Here are some navigational assets that I was speaking about. When I saw Benson sat very tall. He was very, very still, and he was extremely alert when I was talking with him. I could see his eyes were just landed and laced straight on mine. A long neck, his back was extremely long. He was observing in a 360 degrees. He was listening with all of his capacities and answering his questions in the fullness of his abilities to do so in such great English. He was incredibly curious about my questions. He was also living on his intuition. These are the assets of the nomadic mindset, which may have forgotten. These are what we need to institute in education for not only the third world countries, but for everywhere. Sustainability of our educational systems must allow us to be still, to be alert, to be observe, to listen, to be curious in intuition. Today, it doesn't necessarily allow us. We're much in a block. We're in boxes. We're constantly thinking in a framework. We're constantly thinking inside of boxes. The nomadic mindset is borderless. It is all width. It is expansive. It is interconnected. These are some of the tools, the navigational assets that live within every single one of us. Now, as I was talking about the population stats, these are from Bloomberg 2019, and so they probably have shifted in the last couple of years. But 32% of the population between 8 and 25 are Gen Zs. And they have a very co-creative community orientation of wanting to learn and also to work in institutions or organizations or not. Then you have the 31.5% millennial, 26 to 45. These people are the communities. They want to build in those communities. And then you have 36.5 with the Gen X, baby boomers, and the silent generation. So you see 63.5% of the people under 45 in this globe are actually wanting something different in their education. And the way we institute and the way we come together in meetings, the way we commune together, the way we reach out, the way we do this, it's not the sama as it was prior in our industrialized thinking of they want a more flat unity in organizations. They want education, which is more integrative. They want to be able to find different ways to learn. And instead of thinking about them moving into schooling and just education, We have to help them in that education to become entrepreneurs, because there's not going to be a lot of jobs in the future. What I've done is I've spent time with some of the Maasai, and these two, Jeff and his sister Jennifer, I sponsor, and that's part of the sustainability goal, is to be able to sponsor with stakeholders and donors. But it's very important to understand the individuals. I do this privately because I want to know how they're being educated. I want to know what they're learning. I want to know what their grades are. I want to play a role a little bit. And in this particular way of education is about how do we mentor the youth? How do we coach them? How do we build the leaders? What is in the giving back? And these must be instituted into the educational systems and courses, whichever is developing these contemporary ways as we are doing business. Jeff, for example, a young leader, he's the junior chief at 19 years old of his community, his Manyata. He's also the vice president of the students' organization at his college. He also stood up for the last college that he was in against the principles that they were doing and the extra amounts of money that they were taking from them. And of course, they were taking from them, they were abusing them in many ways. And they were using it for their own pockets. They were charging them extra for COVID. They were charging them extra for different trips back and forth to their communities. They were charging them for a variety of different things. And who got to pay for that was the sponsor. It's not right. This needs to be shifted. But that is something about we as sponsors and stakeholders need to have a stronger way of communicating and being, I believe, with the societies and with all of the communities that we are working with. Right. But what is the meaning of nomad? Most people believe the meaning of nomad to be a tribe, a community, a clan that moves from place to find new pastures so that they can survive. Now we think about the nomadic cultures. They are probably the most resilient of any of us. They are also probably the most sustainable because it's all about survival. COVID has shown us that we need to survive. COVID has showed us that we can survive on very little. COVID has shown us that when we don't have our jobs, that we can find ways. This is going nomading, as I call it, is finding a different way forward. Yes, they have lived in discomfort. They have lived in uncertainty. When I would ask them, how do you deal with change? And they would say to me, change? I don't know why you talk about change, because it's a constant. It's always there. You're spending way too much energy in that. So the education we have today in our contemporary lives in the West doesn't allow us to think about these things. Doesn't allow us. We think of way too highfalutin sometimes thinkings, but the basis of life gives us the simplicity of life and less complex, but it gives us the truth of life. And this is an education that we all need to think about. But when I was in Mongolia, I was at the Blue Sky Lounge, and I was speaking to a woman by the name of Batgirl Bat. And Batgirl Bat was the head of the branding council of Mongolia at the time. And I asked her, what is the true meaning of nomad? And she said to me this: it is the movement of the mind. The movement of the mind, the movement of the mind. Isn't that beautiful? And that is what we need to educate in the courses that we have, and for the upbringing of all individuals. This is the movement of the mind. It's the nomad in the mind, finding different pathways, finding different ways to make critical decisions and different thinkings, finding different ideas. This is the openness, the limitless, the fluid, the flowing of the mindset, of the nomadic mindset. This is what we are asking ourselves to do. This is what COVID is asking us to do, is to find this width in our thinking so that we can create, and also to bring our attention not only to that, but to the planet. as how we can all survive in the interconnected systems we are. So the movement of the mind is exactly what we are wanting to do in education. And that is what the nomadic mindset is. The nomadic mindset I have put here is holistic. It is the fluidly flowing and limitless movement of the mind that is always looking and exploring different paths and territories. It does so with the intentions of being curious, agile, adaptive, strategic, collaborative, and much more, as it is strategically creates decisions and critical thinking leading towards a sustainable destination and outcomes. It may sound poetic, but this is what the nomadic mindset is. And this is not the industrialized mindsets. And this is not necessarily the settler mindset. Okay, when I was doing my research showed me that we have three mindsets, general mindsets: nomadic, builder, and settler. And they all three of them have their own different trajectory, and they all have their different qualities to them. If you were to think of building a house, for example, you would have an architect to create the house, and that's probably the nomad. And then you have the builder and the person that is going to build and put all of the pieces together and get the teams together and drive the teams, and that would probably be the builder. And the settler is one that holds it together, not only after the building is done, but is there to really keep the glue of that building together and to take care of it. They are the caretakers in many ways. Now, we all have all three of these in ourselves. Most people of today are builders and settlers because of the industrialized thinking and because of the way that and the agriculturalist thinking. The nomadic thinking is new. It's not so new, actually. It's been around for generations, for many, many, many thousands of years through the nomadic people. But we can change these inside of ourselves. We have a dominance for one more than another. It may change with culture, with age, with financial situation, with location. It may change a variety of different ways. It can change within a conversation. If we look at an organization, it can look at the same. If we look at education, it could be, we have many of the teachers are probably more builder or settler. They're not nomadic. And so therefore they put into boxes the learning of the different skills and all the different aspects, whether they're humanities or sciences or whichever. And some of them, yes, need to have some structure to them, of course. But the nomads know about structure as well, because they have to be very strategic. They just don't move to move. They move because it's important, and they must be safe with the community because they're moving the community around. Very, very interesting. Now, what I'm going to do, I want to share with you a chapter from my book. So at the very end, if you connect with me on LinkedIn, I will share with you these three mindsets, and also you'll get a bigger understanding of what they are, because we don't have so much time to go into them. All right. I also have what I've created, which is called the Nomadic Mindset Journey Assessment. And it's an assessment which helps individuals understand the awareness building about identifying at what phase an individual is on their journey towards a nomadic mindset. There's three different phases in this. So that is of interest to you. Please share with me also. All right, continuing on, moving on. One of the things that's very important about the nomadic mindset is the understanding of moving on. Everything is in movement. Education is in movement. Knowledge is in movement. The amount of sustainability is in movement. It is never static. We are always moving. The momentum of sustainability is on moving. It's like a symphony. It goes fast, it goes slow, it goes in medium tempos all over. We move, we are constantly moving on, shifting and changing. Flowing is what we do. And we need to do this in the sustainability goals to understand that they are not static. They are constant in movement. They constantly have to be shifted and changed. They have to be looked at from a different perspective. How do we get different stakeholders in? What is the type of education that is needed? All of these things we need to move on from. Now let me share with you this. When I was on safari, I often, when my guide would stop and he'd say, look over behind that bush, you will be able to see Giselle and their little ones. And I would say, which bush are you talking about? And I couldn't see which bush he was talking about. And I said, okay, I see the bush, but I couldn't really. I became very frustrated. When I was in Namibia, my guide said to me, he said, look over behind those trees over there, you'll be able to see the Steenboks and their children. And I said, which bushes and which trees are you talking about? There's quite a few. He said, those ones over there. And I kept scanning and scanning and scanning. I could not see. And I said, okay, so stop, because this is very frustrating. I said, you see very differently than I do. I see from a very different perspective. So share with me how you see what you see. And he says, I look for what doesn't fit in the picture. I look for what does not fit in the picture. When we look at sustainability goals, we need to look at what doesn't fit into the picture of what our perception is. Now, you look into this desert, you'll see you need to look for what doesn't fit into this picture. And then you will see what is needed. Because it's not the obvious always the time. Remember that we all see with a different lens. So when we go into different cultures and sustainability and education, we need to see from the lenses of the people, not our lenses. What are the lenses of them? What do they need? What it fits into their picture so that they can survive and grow and learn and keep lifelong learning. This is an important thing. This is part of the nomadic mindset, is looking for this. When I was in Mongolia, a young millennial girl, she was a Z, and she was a student at the University of Mongolia. She was telling me how she was longing from the Mongolian steppes, and she said the rolling dunes of the wonderful Gobi Desert. And I could see, she said, this is where freedom is. She said, this is exactly where we need to be. This is where you need agility and resilience to be able to survive and to be able to sustain your life. This is the ability. We get this strength from this. And she said, at one point, nomads think vastly, act narrowly. Think vastly, act narrowly. Our education system is asking us to think narrowly before it thinks vastly. We need to go wide on every decision and critical thinking. In the decisions, we need to go wide. When we teach people the sustainability of things, when we develop these goals, we need to go wide before we act narrowly, not act narrowly. This is part of the whole survival. This is part of the nomadic mindset, is thinking vastly and acting narrowly. This will help you and give you the ability to build your ability to sustain sustainability by these navigational tools and assets. When I was in Morocco, Said Zaki said to me, everything is an opportunity. He said that Berbers see everything as an opportunity. Even the sand is an opportunity. He said the sand is always constantly moving, and we must move and shift with the sand. And that is exactly what has happened with the time. The 2015 sustainability goals are then, but we're shifting sands now, and we need to see those 2015 in a different way now that we're in COVID. How can we move faster because of digitization? How can we increase the learning and faster? Remember that the third world nations, they didn't have telephones. They leapt forward to mobile phones. We need to leap to where they are in the learning process, not give them old learning. That's outdated. It's boring for them today. It's boring for most people. So these are some of the navigational assets And this is one thing that I was told by Roman Simonel, who is a anthropologist whose specialty is in Berbers. He said, they have this strength to turn a fatality into an opportunity. Let us turn COVID into an opportunity of strength for the learning and education and sustainable assets that we have. We need this ability to sustain sustainability, though, and that comes from the nomadic mindset. The nomadic mindset. And I share with you just quickly Kalenga's story, a sustainable story. When he was 7 years old, he's from Namibia. When he was 7 years old, he was in a car crash with his parents, and his parents were killed. He became an orphan. His family would not take him in. He became a street kid. He lived off of the streets. And he had told me, he says, the people that put food into the dustbins never realized how grateful I was for that. At 11 years old, he was picked up by a woman and said, you need to go to school. And so he started education with 5-year-olds at 11 years old. He was bullied and had a lot of challenges and problems. He was very insular and then eventually he tried to commit suicide, but he was survived. And then he went into high school and he got bullied and he continued his work and he tried to commit suicide again, but he survived. And then he got into university. And the first 2 years of university, he was staying in a prison because he had no money and he had no place to stay. He had to walk 3 hours there and 3 hours back. He could not get to school. He was almost killed again en route back at night. Eventually, he graduated last year with honors. In a double honors, he is now doing his master's degree in Berlin. As a man who said life is a gift, never give up. Education to him is absolutely his tool to his survival and his sustainability of life. His ability to sustain, his ability to be able to really dig into his nomadic mindset, to really understand what I have shared with you today is what is giving him life, just like many, many of the people in Africa and other places that don't have the education but need it. I want to thank you very much, and I want to share with you, this is the full mantra. There is no beginning to who you are. There is no ending to who you are. You are migrating to expansion. Migrate to expansion, to live in the nomadic mindset. Never settle for too long in your mind. Always move, always expand to discover better routes and greener pastures. This is where great leaders thrive. The ability to sustain sustainability lives within the nomadic mindset. Migrate to expansion. We are migrating. Where we were is not where we are. We are evolving. I dare you to evolve. Look for what doesn't fit into the picture. The nomadic mindset, builder mindset, and the settler mindset. Everything is an opportunity. And thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kevin. Thank you for sharing your mantra with us. That was an amazing journey. And as you said, we need to migrate from thinking about our old education system. And I think, as you rightly said, the solution is to understand and adopt the nomadic mindset. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your amazing journey with us.
Thank you very much.